Well, it's actually the Mirror newspaper that has a big exclusive today about David Cameron's Foreign Office blowing £70,000 on an app to help its staff remember things. There's a 1-year contract on an artificial intelligence tool called Clever Nelly that is being designed to help officials with their knowledge retention. The technology, which is developed by a firm called Elephants Don't Forget, sends staff micro quizzes each day designed to increase recall through repetition. Interesting. I mean, David Cameron says he personally cannot remember in any detail being briefed about the Horizon scandal when he was Prime Minister. Despite being in between number 10 in 2010, between 2010 and 2016, he told the BBC, "I don't recall in any detail being briefed on being aware of the scale of this issue. We've got to get to the bottom of it, and that's what inquiries do. They can look at what ministers were told, what information was put in front of them, what did they decide, because it's hard to remember every letter and piece of paper put in front of you." Well, listen, I've worked in government, and that is true. There are lots of things you can't always remember. But in 2021, he told MPs 9 times he couldn't remember whether he had met specific individuals or discussed certain matters during a grilling over his lobbying for a firm called Greensill Capital. Let's talk to James Heale. He is political correspondent of The Spectator. James, do you think David Cameron might need this app for himself?
Well, I think possibly, Peter. I mean, of course, some of the most famous brain fades of recent political times have occurred with David Cameron, not least 2012, when he famously forgot his daughter Nancy in a pub for 15 minutes.
Who amongst us can honestly say we haven't forgotten a toddler being in a pub?
Well, exactly. Although, Peter, only one of us has forgotten a toddler in a pub on the same day you were launching your Troubled Families programme for government. So that was suboptimal.
Could not make it up.
And also, remember, of course, the famous time, I think, is it 2016, when he got his favourite football club, Aston Villa, mixed up with West Ham, presumably because they play the same shirts. So, I mean, this app, although it's designed for civil servants, probably could be used by a few ministers as well.
Jane has been in touch and says, "Hi, Peter, does this app help him remember to get to help civil servants remember to get to the office rather than working from home?" I think is another matter which a lot of our viewers and listeners, including Jane, aren't massively happy with. James, how do you think people will react to this?
Well, I think that it's going to be the portent of things to come, because this is an artificial intelligence app, and I think we're going to see much more of that in Whitehall and coming up in the years to follow. I was at a talk last week with the Cabinet Office Minister, Alex Burkhart. He was talking about how AI is going to increasingly become the institutional memory of Whitehall. So whereas once we had Sir Humphrey, the man writ large, the system in human form, increasingly we're going to see these things like this Nelly app come across, and people are going to have to ask questions legitimately, whether is this the best use of taxpayers' money or not.
I think £70,000 is a heck of a lot for an app for Foreign Office people. It's a very interesting week politically as well. The Rwanda debate has dominated. It goes to the House of Lords next. Just talk us through what happens with that in your estimation, your analysis, James.
Well, I mean, the House of Lords is now going to be looking at this in an election year. And on the one hand, under the conventions that govern our Parliament, the House of Lords doesn't tend to oppose anything that was in manifestos. And so therefore they say, hang on a sec, this wasn't pledged in any manifesto in 2019. No one was talking about stop the votes then. So some of them are minded to block it. And then, of course, it would then cause a bit of a constitutional crisis, and then it would have to probably fail before the election. But others in the Lords I've been talking to say, actually, they don't think the bill is going to work. So therefore, they're tempted to let the bill pass and let it fail on its own merits in the courts. So I think actually Rishi Sunak, although obviously he would want that bill to go into law and safe passage in for it to work, there's also some in his team who are saying privately, well, it'd probably be better if it was blocked by the Lords than the courts, because at least then you can say it's about peers versus the people rather than the courts, given what Braverman and Jenrick have been saying this week, which is that it's going to be killed by the courts. He doesn't want to give them vindication, so ideally it would be better to be held up in the Lords than the courts, I'd say. Just
speaking of Rwanda, Keir Starmer, Sir Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, has been speaking to our colleagues in talkSPORT this morning. He joined Max Rushton and Charlie Baker on talkSPORT earlier today. He gave his thoughts on the Rwanda vote in the Commons earlier in the week. This is what he had to say.
I wanted to ask you a question about Rwanda. It's in the news this week about asylum seekers being sent there, and it went through Parliament. It's still got to go through the Lords. And correct me if I'm wrong here, my understanding is that the Supreme Court in the UK, British judges said asylum seekers were not safe in Rwanda. And I wonder, in a footballing sense, and maybe this is too tangential or too big a jump, do you feel uncomfortable that when you go to the Emirates you see Visit Rwanda on the sleeves of the Arsenal
Well, I
shirt?
thought this might be coming up. The Supreme Court, so that's our highest court, the best judges that we've got, all looked at the evidence of what happens to asylum seekers who were processed in Rwanda, and decided 5-0, all 5 judges, that it was unsafe for people to be sent there. And that was the ruling of the court. Now, Arsenal obviously got Visit Rwanda on their shirt, but that is I mean, you know, visiting Rwanda on a voluntary basis.
Have you visited Rwanda?
I haven't.
No.
But
despite all the constant being told to visit Rwanda.
Well, the only
Emirates.
people that go to Rwanda from here are Home Secretaries, I think. That's the only person the Prime Minister's actually managed to get to Rwanda. But look, Rwanda cost us £400 million already not to send anyone to Rwanda. Nobody wants these boats coming across the channel. That's got to be stopped. I very strongly feel that the way to stop them is to stop the gangs that are putting them in the boats in the first place. Before I went into politics, I was the chief prosecutor, so I ran the prosecution service for England and Wales for 5 years, and we had to take down gangs that were doing terrorist conspiracies, that were doing drugs and gun running across borders. It's not dissimilar, and we managed to take those gangs down. I will never accept that the people that are running this vile trade of putting in people into small boats can't be taken down by law enforcement, and that's where I'd put my political
practically try and change it
capital.
5-0 is 5-0 from the judges. Grr, lads, football, grr. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, that was him talking earlier on talkSport. He joined Max Rushton and Charlie Baker earlier today on talkSport, giving his thoughts on the Rwanda vote in the Commons earlier this week. James, what do you make of what he told talkSport earlier?
Well, I think watching that, I was quite struck by just how much more relaxed and comfortable Keir Starmer now feels. In his own skin, and in a football analogy. So he's very comfortable talking about that. I think often he struggles to come across as authentic, but he is a genuine football fan and has been for many, many years, and loves playing five-a-side. I think it was some useful analogies he was using there. I don't personally think that his analysis is entirely sound in that, you know, the government are already trying to crack the criminal gangs. But look, it was a relaxed format and a way of making a serious point, which is trying to diffuse some of the criticism about his stance on Rwanda by making it about practicality rather than objecting in principle.
He also was tackled by Max Rushton and Charlie Baker earlier today on talkSport about being boring. Let's play this clip.
So, Keir, the election expert, John Curtis, said there might be a really low turnout because both leadership candidates are boring. I mean, I get called boring a lot, and I don't care. But do you care?
Look, I've been called so many names in the course of my professional career, particularly since I went into politics. If boring is the best anyone can come up with, then I'll take that any day of the week.
Yeah, I agree. I'd take boring.
Also, I mean, the other thing I just say, I obviously go around the country all the time. I love talking to people in their community, where they work, just absorbing what they've got to say to me and letting them talk to me in any way they like. And nobody yet I've been in politics 9 years, nobody has said, I'll tell you what, can you tell me a joke? Or what I want from a Prime Minister is someone who's really entertaining. Yes. I mean, we have actually tried that version of being a Prime Minister, and it didn't really work very well.
We've tried that around the world.
It's a fair point, isn't it, James Heale? We've tried the entertaining Prime Minister. I'm sure he was referring to Boris Johnson there, who, of course, Sir Keir Starmer opposed, but he doesn't mind being boring, and actually maybe making politics boring is not a terrible thing, James, although it could never be boring to you and me, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt that Keir Starmer there was referring to Theresa May when he talked about not so boring. I mean, boring is back. That's what Michael Gove said after the Trust disaster. And that was true of a lot of last year. I think the key thing is it's not so much about boring, it's about competence. People really just want decent public services that work well. They want to, have trains that run on time. They want the health service to work. And that's what Labour's big pitch is. And coming at a time when I think only about 2 or 3% of voters think that public services as a whole have got better since 2010.
Tell us that statistic again. Tell us that percentage.
3%, according to the Mail on Sunday poll in November of last year, think that public services have got better.
3% of people think public services have got better since the Conservatives took power. I have only one question. Who are these 3% of people? What public services are they using? No, but that is an astonishing statistic, isn't it, James?
I think we probably know them in Westminster personally, Peter.
Good point.
It is. And I think basically, you've got to remember as well, 2019, Boris, yes, was an entertainer, but he was also the man who promised to make Brexit go away. He was saying, in fact, all this pantomime Parliament, I will take the heat out. And people thought, just get it over with. I didn't vote for Brexit, but I want to get it done. And that's what Keir Starmer's promise is this time. He's trying to take the heat out of politics. He's trying to make people's lives better. And that is a very powerful pitch. And Rishi Sunak is going to really struggle to overcome that.